Welcome to Rooted Within with Lily and Dan, a podcast that shines a spotlight on positive change makers, sharing their stories of legacy, inspiration, and impact.
Good afternoon, Lily.
Hi, Dad.
How was your week?
My week has been hectic.
It's been
really hectic.
Things are ramping up now.
Yeah, on the constant
Back on the
vitamin C.
Barocca.
Back on
We're
the
going to get the
Barocca.
podcast sponsored by
I
Barocca.
know it's your Barocca.
It's the only way we're going to get through this season, I think.
But I can't wait for you to introduce our new guest because it's an awesome name.
It's an awesome name. We've got Marie McQueen in the,
got a
in
real
the
ring
studio.
to it.
Yeah, it sounds very fashion.
Thank you, my
Yeah.
parents.
Yeah, thank them for sure. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
This is great.
It is awesome to have you in here.
It's nice to come to a podcast that's shot like this.
Properly set
recorded
up.
like
Yeah.
properly set up. It's
Yeah.
lovely.
I mean,
It's nice to-
Yasmin and JJ do a great job. So
They
like,
do.
We're going to give a
Shout out,
shout out
shout
to
out.
the podcast now.
Yeah.
Yeah. But welcome.
Thank you.
So obviously it's good to have you here, and really keen to hear your story and get to know you. I can't even speak this afternoon. Get to know a little bit about yourself. It's been a long day already.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where would you like me to start?
Right at the beginning, offers help. Yeah.
No, really, do that.
Like,
I was
really?
born.
Like, yeah, I was born.
Take
Yeah.
it from there.
Well, I'm from Canada.
Okay.
And I'm a journalist,
Mhm.
and I've spent half my career in Canada and then half my career in the UAE. I came over in 2008 for the launch of the national newspaper,
Oh,
so I was on that
wow.
team,
Oh, wow, okay.
which was the coolest thing in the world.
I mean, it was huge then because there wasn't really a national newspaper. There
No.
wasn't any newspaper that was
Imagine
really
what
a
we're doing.
publication here.
But how does someone from Canada end up in the UAE?
Well, there was a lot of Canadians that started that paper.
Okay.
Because the editor was Martin Newland, which is why I applied, and he worked for the Telegraph, but then he had also started a newspaper in Canada called the National Post.
Okay.
So he was very well known and like revered.
Yeah, respected.
And that was one of the reasons I wanted to come. But I was 37 at the time, and I just had never actually consciously thought about living abroad, but I wanted to. I always, in moments of discontent, would sort of search on my laptop
pack and
look
go.
on. Yeah, and I knew a few people who'd done it and freelanced, and I'm like, I'm not brave enough for that. And it's weird when you have kind of a calling, because I now know it was a calling to go. But at first I bought a condominium and decorated it, and then, moved into it and everything. And then a year later I'm sitting in the nice apartment looking around going,
Ticking
I
off
still
the
kind of
list.
feel this
Yeah.
way, right? I still so had a breakup, and then that night just was back looking on the international job boards and saw a newspaper in Abu Dhabi, which I had to Google. I didn't
Yep.
know where it was.
Mhm.
A lot of people didn't
Nope.
until Sex and the City came along.
Yeah.
And, Sex
And
and
also
the
as well,
City
like, it's not the real Abu Dhabi in that
Yeah.
movie.
it's not.
Like, you
But
look at
I
it, it's
did
like,
notice.
that's definitely not Emirates Palace.
But I did notice everyone knew where it was after
Yeah.
that. Like it was like before
Yeah.
That's
when
really
I would be.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Just, I guess Dubai overshadowed it in many ways.
100%.
Because everyone knows Dubai. But
Yeah,
not
and when I
necessarily
found out
Dhabi.
where it was, I'm
Well,
like,
people
oh,
used to think that Dubai was the capital.
True story.
they still do. In fact,
Yeah.
so many people say to me, where you live in Dubai, how's Dubai when you're in like.
No,
Yeah.
I live in Abu Dhabi. Yeah.
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 So anyway, I came to launch that, and that was just the experience of a lifetime. It was over 200 journalists. It was like, I don't know what you call it where you're from, Frosh Week at university, Freshers Week.
Yeah, we call it Freshers Week
yeah.
in the UK.
Yeah, so it was like that. Like it was
Okay.
like I had no idea that it was going to be like that. It was a huge party. It was so much fun. It was people from all over the world. There was lots of infighting because you had British journalists and
I can
American journalists and
imagine.
Canadian journalists, and I was so excited because I thought we'll all be working together. But it was like sort of like
Quite
rivalries.
tribal.
Yeah, like Knots Landing or Dallas. It was actually
Yeah.
a little bit like that, but just the super coolest experience.
How did you get into journalism?
Me, I always wanted to be in journalism,
Okay. What was it that attracted you?
telling stories.
Okay.
And actually, looking back, I've been going over this now because I'm going over a lot of my life lately,
Yeah.
processing a lot of things.
It's interesting because many people are right now.
It's
It's a
weird.
thing,
Yeah.
I think.
And looking at past sort of traumas or
Yeah.
adverse experiences, and I had never acknowledged that the beginning of my journalism career was very traumatic. When I say I went into it to tell stories, I didn't really think that I would be at horrible, disgusting crime scenes.
Yeah, what type of
terrible
stories?
accidents,
Yeah.
sitting with people who just lost 4 members of their family, trying to get them to talk to me about it, sitting with fathers in emergency rooms whose kids were dying, and I didn't think about any of
This
that
is like
stuff.
deep,
This is taking
real,
a dark turn.
No, but it's like deep, real emotional.
Yeah, and I was
content.
ill-equipped. I'm a very sensitive person, and it was like not in the greatest match. But first of all, I had to go work in really small places. So I had to go start out. Journalism's a really tough job to get into. It's
Yeah, I
like
can
getting into
imagine.
radio or television. And I was one of the only people in my journalism class to get a job because I went and worked in Tilsonburg, which is like a tobacco little tiny town of 12,000 people.
Wow.
And my friends would always make fun of me because I would write stories about like a giant zucchini. Someone would call and say, I grew this massive zucchini, or I have a 2-headed tulip, or like crazy stuff. Sheep show.
Yeah, someone's cat got stuck up a tree.
Yeah, like they were those kinds of
Wow.
stories. But you have to do those stories
I mean,
to
you're
learn how
gonna
to do.
start somewhere.
Yeah. So you also have to do that, and then you have to do the crime, and you have to do the horrible stories before you
got
can
to
get
earn
to
your stripes.
Yeah, and then I got a column, and then I was out of that stuff. You still do a lot of sad stuff, you like murder. They'll send you to the murder trial, or they'll send you to the Supreme Court case.
What's the saddest story that sticks out for you in your memory?
Oh my gosh, I always think about this mom whose daughter was, her and her best friend were walking alongside the road in the country, home from a party. They'd been drinking and having a great time, and this guy was drunk, and he sideswiped them, and the friend woke up in a ditch and didn't know what went on, didn't notice she was injured, went home, went to bed. The other girl had died. And that trial, the mom, and the way she just, she wore the button, she couldn't let it go.
Yeah.
The man, his wife had a baby, she was in court, he had a drinking problem, like every single aspect of it,
It's just really traumatic.
just couldn't even.
Yeah.
And the parents of the girl who died were so angry at the friend because
Oh,
they
God.
thought she went home and didn't care. And
Yeah.
all these things I now know happen when, when you read a story in the paper and you're like, well, why didn't they do this after?
Yeah.
Well, we know people don't always react in the way
Yeah.
that we think they would react
Yeah.
when they've been in shock. So
It's always
yeah,
rational.
I guess that's one of the saddest all-around stories. I just thought this is this.
It was
this
horrible for
giant shame.
everyone, yeah.
It's just horrible. I remember the wife of the man, who just he also didn't know he did it.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
I mean, and then they argued that he was willfully blind and he must have known. He thought he had it. It was just all around, yeah, good times.
Everyone's kind of like a victim in that scenario.
It was just, I don't know why didn't, I always look for the silver lining and the learning but with that one, it was just very, very
There wasn't
difficult to
one.
find out.
How did you go
Tragic.
home at the end of the night and sort of shed that?
Well, this is the thing. Like, this is what I'm realizing now, all these 22 years later, that I didn't.
Okay.
You
And
absorb it.
Yeah, and I didn't, when I got up to Ottawa, which is the, where this stuff all happened, which is the capital of Canada, and that's where I had most of my 8 year, I spent 8 years there. It was just a very tough environment. There was no one. You wouldn't say, I feel upset about this. I saw something. The editors were mean.
Yeah, mental health did not exist.
No.
Right. So you either did a good job on the story or you missed something that competition had. That was it. Like,
Yeah.
Wow.
and I drank. I
Pretty
drank
toxic
a lot.
back then.
Yeah, I drank a lot. Like I didn't drink regularly at home alone, but I would go out.
Blow off. steam.
Socially drink.
Yeah, I mean, I remember for a while there, we always worked every other weekend, so I had Mondays off, and I would try to find someone to drink with on Sunday night, which is
Wow.
hard because that's like everyone's
Yeah,
working
Sunday
on
is a
Monday.
hard,
Yeah.
yeah.
I would that would be a mission. And looking back, I don't drink anymore, and that's one of the things I think
But I
about.
mean, we can compare that to the events industry.
Yeah.
That's where we're from
Sure,
primarily, isn't it? It's very similar.
Yeah.
Harsh pressures, can be quite a toxic environment sometimes,
Yes.
can be quite, alpha masculine dominated.
It reminds
and
me of
then-
film, right? It's a bit
Yeah.
like that because you've got crews, and if you
Yeah.
work on a crew and you're good, you continue on.
Yeah.
But it's okay. I worked in restaurants before journalism, and it was very similar, right?
Yeah.
Like there's yelling and screaming,
Yeah.
but then like you all sit down and have a beer.
And you have to,
Yeah, you
have
have to
to swallow.
decompress.
You have to swallow a lot.
Yeah.
There's whether it's client, whether it's agency, whether it's a supplier. At some point or another, we've all had to just
Yeah.
swallow, and that eats
Yes.
at you.
So how was the experience moving to Abu Dhabi then? Because I'm guessing the journalism is very different here.
Yeah.
And the stories and the things that you report on, I guess, are quite different.
Yeah, and here was the first place that I became an editor. So
Okay.
I had always been a reporter and a columnist, and I never wanted to do that. And then I came over here as a copy editor, and then became the arts and life, and then the features editor. So it was a lot different. I was a reporter briefly during very hot time, and that's Because when I got here, I was like, I want to be a reporter again, and then I had a few assignments outside, and I
You're like,
decided
no,
that
I want to be back in the AC. Yeah, thank you very much.
And those were great skills, by the way, like to become an editor and put all of those
Yeah.
things together. And when I started running a department, it's very different. Obviously, you can't report on all the things that you can report on in the West. But one thing that's been very interesting, is watching the evolution and the opening up of the media here, and watching the closing up of the media elsewhere, and the censorship.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
I've really been able to. I always, we always go back home, stay here, go back home, stay here. I love it here. I want to stay here. I'm getting my golden visa. I'm so excited.
Nice.
But one day last year, I thought, I know why I was here through COVID, so I could see this, so I could spot it. Because if I was in Canada, I wouldn't have seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting to talk about the closing down of media elsewhere, because it's, it is very much becoming that. It's becoming very polarized as well.
It's crazy.
It's like either one side or the other. It's not kind of that neutral journalism that you used to have before.
Everything's like, most of the stories I read in COVID, whatever you think of COVID, most of the stories I read in COVID, I would have sent back to the reporter. I would have sent them back. You stopped presenting another side. There was no critical voices whatsoever, and there was an argument that we were sort of in a wartime situation where propaganda is like, justified. But it hasn't stopped, and it started years before. It started with these many articles you see where writers are acting as sort of cheerleaders, and I never saw that before because I was immersed in it. That's why I kind of call myself a recovering journalist now, because I just see it, and I'm not sure I am sure I couldn't go back into traditional media now, even if probably like the Globe and Mail or the New York Times offered me a column. I don't know, they haven't, but
Maybe you become
we
So you said recovering journalist.
I call myself
so you've left journalism.
Well, okay, I run a platform called Live Healthy, which is the only men's and women's health and wellness platform in the Middle East. I have my own platform, Hot Flash Inc., which is for women in perimenopause and menopause and midlife. I'm doing journalism, but I call myself a recovering journalist because the way I see journalism being done now, I'm not a fan of it.
Okay.
There is often a narrative, and I guess there always
often
was.
an agenda behind it, I guess now.
Yeah, and I guess there always was, because I used to.
There always was.
I think back, there always was, but I just didn't see it.
Yeah.
And I guess when I was younger, I lost my mom when I was 27. She had pancreatic cancer. She was 53, the age I am now.
Ooh.
And she was sort of unwell for a long time. She was just like an unwell person, like a beautiful woman and a nurse, but unwell. And so I think that experience and just feeling helpless to help her really put me into like looking for alternatives and sent me down that road, even though consciously I didn't know it. And I now know those stories when I was doing them, the pushback I would get in Ottawa. And even when I came to the National from the British editors that I would be working for. It was the same sort of agenda, right? It was just like this natural remedies and sound healing, and those things were squashed. Yeah. And I now know kind of what that was, but I didn't at the time. Because no one ever squashes anything. No one ever says, except our first editor at the National. You just can't do that story. I really, really respected him for saying that. But it's never like that. Like, and this is when people talk about the media and say the media as if it. And they've been saying this for my entire career. And I would say, look, I know it's this, like, it's not. It's me just trying to find the truth and tell the story. Like, I'm not part of some group. But now that I think back to it,
you
it's like you're pushing up
But you
against.
were a true journalist.
I'm trying. Yeah, I try.
Do you know what I mean? That's what journalism is about. About the story, about getting to the heart of the story. It's not about any bias or anyone's opinion. It's about what is there. Get all the facts.
Hopefully.
So
hopefully.
But you said you've gone into health and wellness.
Yeah, like
How did that
just
happen?
sort of after I lost my mom, it just became an interest,
Okay.
And always like, why was my mom sicker? Like, why was she sick? And I think now that was part of the reason, is trying to get to the bottom of why some people get sick and some people don't get sick. And
did you find an answer to that?
No, it just gets more complicated. But yes.
Okay.
But I don't want anyone to think that I think you're responsible for whatever happens to you, because I think there's a lot of bad luck.
Yeah.
But I think.
But lifestyle and lifestyle choices does play a massive role in it, of course.
And the way that your mind works.
Yeah.
And where your mind goes and what you focus on and how honest you are I've been through all these health challenges myself in my 40s. So, you know, I had gut issues for years. What was I doing? Ignoring all that trauma. And those gut issues started, IBS started right around when I got that job in Ottawa. You know, and the drinking, right? Like these are things I didn't understand. Yeah. And I've just been through a whole healing process because you can't have IBS for 20 years without it like coming back to bite you. Your body just works on backup systems until it doesn't. So, yeah.
Because I had like really bad trouble for ages with gut issues and IBS, and I had to get to the root cause of it, and it was anxiety. It was stress.
How long did it take you to admit that?
I probably had it for about 6 or 7 years.
And how many doctors were like, we don't know? Like,
yeah, I didn't even properly go to doctors.
Oh, really?
I just allowed it to happen.
Right.
I just thought that was part of normal life.
Did you feel like tired and
tired, exhausted? I'd wake up with the most excruciating pain every single morning. For at least 3 years, it was really bad, especially after the period from COVID. And it wasn't until the conversations that we had like halfway through last year, and it was like, you need to go and like go fix whatever is going on. Didn't necessarily go and see a doctor,
but that was
just
the
had
thing.
to take time out.
He didn't see it.
Couldn't see it.
That was the crazy thing. And I'm just looking at him
it.
going, you're not okay.
Something's not right.
You are not okay.
There was a whole series of issues, and I went to go see a therapist and actually started to go through the trauma. And it wasn't until like actually going through that experience, then you can start to feel calm again. You start to understand the triggers. You start to understand the situations that give you that anxiety. Yeah. And it kind of naturally got to a place where it was much better.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because it's all starting to come back a little bit right now because we're in the middle of the event. Well, we're about to start the event season, so it's obviously quite a stressful environment. And I can really feel that. I can see that trigger now.
But like
I'd never acknowledged it before, but now it's like I can clearly see it.
But like they say, body, mind, and soul, they're connected.
Yeah.
If one's out of balance, it's going to screw with the others.
We were like this. We were all everything was together.
Yeah.
Like what, you know, you talk about the vagus nerve. Like this is, no one even knew this when I started going to doctors. Like,
I don't know what is that.
Yeah.
The vagus nerve. Yeah,
it's just like a massive nerve in your body. You have to start paying attention to it.
Really?
You can actually do like exercises that will work and help you calm. It's just a massive nerve that runs like all
one
through
single
your body.
nerve.
Well, it's like
a
system.
It's
like a
through your
system.
body.
Okay.
Yeah. The other thing that really helped me, because I've been healing this year, was an app called Nerva. I don't have any affiliation with them.
Okay.
I paid for it for 3 months, and it's just daily hypnosis and tons of information.
Okay.
And at the end of that time, I was like, yeah, this is fully connected. Like it took me that amount of time, and then I worked with the doctor or whatever.
But it is all interconnected, you know. I guess like the stresses in the environment you put your body under, that has a negative reaction. Plus as well, like lifestyle choices, or not even choices really. It's just the way that we conduct life or the situations we find ourselves in, the traumas.
But it's like one thing I learned going through my own little trauma last year. It was that trauma lives in the body.
Yes.
Completely.
Not in the mind. Yeah. So like, I went to therapy. I'm like, I went through this. I need tools to deal with. I go, how do I overcome this? And I'm sitting there with them, and they're doing the whole peace, love, and mum beans, whatever conversation. My dog got hit by a car, and I saw it. So that was the part that I'm like, how do I get past this, And I'm sitting there in the therapy, and I'm like, I just want to punch you. Like, honestly, I just want to punch you. You're not helping. It's not working. What you're saying isn't working, right? And only because no matter what she said, it wasn't going to fix me, because trauma, that sort of trauma sits it's in your body. You got to get it out of your body. So that's still something I need to sort out.
Doesn't work. Yeah, I went through 4 years
not
of
for
therapy
that.
in my 40s.
No.
And I think she told me, what did she help me realize? I was codependent, and I had this from my childhood. She didn't help me fix it.
Yeah. No. I do. Let me just to clarify. I think therapy is one of the best gifts. Personally, I think it's one of the best gifts you can give yourself, because when people not everyone understands the mind. Yeah. Not everyone understands behavioral. Not everyone has a great level of don't have the right level of self-care. Yeah. Speaking with someone and explaining that, they're able to sort of help you digest and understand.
But then you have to go and action that.
Obviously, the healing is up to you.
Yeah.
But when I say the therapist wasn't useful to me, was because for me it was about, how do I stop seeing? Yeah. My dog getting run over by a car over and over again. How do I stop seeing it? Because like it was in my body. So that's what I meant by talking.
What did you do?
It hasn't fixed yet.
Okay.
I'll be honest, it hasn't fixed yet. I haven't found something, but like I avoid going. It happened just outside my house, so I can't even drive the driveway.
It's crazy.
And you just if I need to scream, I scream. If I need to cry, I cry. I do what I need to do. But
it needs time. You're like, You know, I fell off a chair in Thailand about 4 or 5 months ago and jammed my arm. Like I was getting this giant wasp that was the size of a gerbil and made this weird sound out of my room, and I fell off the chair because when it came out it flew at me. And I jammed my arm, and I only bring it up because the arm still hurts. I can only just now do planks. It still really hurts.
It takes time to
this
heal.
is what you're dealing with emotionally, right? But I do think talk therapy is a great intro, but now we're seeing all this somatic work, right?
Lots of somatic.
And I've been doing this. I just
So what's somatic?
It's like getting the trauma out of your tissues. And this sounds crazy to some people.
I believe it.
But listen, when I was like 30, I ran a lot. And I would, sometimes in the middle of my run, I would double over bawling, crying. Or I would do pigeon in yoga and cry. This happens to a lot of people. And I would ask people, I did this my whole life. Does this ever happen to you? And of course, no one's.
And people, when they say, they go, no, you're like, yeah, totally, no, no.
I did this my whole life, like outsourcing, because you couldn't just look it up in the internet all the time. There wasn't that much info. But now I just have been seeing more and more. Like it's just it's like, you know, a trend.
Oh, it's all over
trend.
Instagram.
It's all over. But I tried in August this program called Workout Witch, and it was a 30-day like hip trauma release. And I mean, I was like, this isn't even doing anything. Like, 'cause it was just little movements. And there's also tremoring, which you'll like get yourself to shake.
Okay.
The theory is that people shake after traumas naturally, and it's part of our natural response to sort of rid our body of
it's
that.
taking you there. Yeah.
That's a whole other thing. But meanwhile, this whole month that I'm like, this isn't even doing anything. I'm sleeping like 10 hours a night.
Yeah.
I'm feeling tired, but like in a way, like in a soft, relaxed way. I'm crying all the time. Like it is working.
Yeah.
It's just so hard for us to connect.
It's very slow.
Things. Yeah.
But like you're talking about years.
Yes. And I did 2 other sessions in a week. One week I did like a tremor and release session. And that's the sort of tremoring. And then I did a somatic therapy with a girl who took this training and was just sort of trying it out on me. And then I got really sick. I got a bad cold. And I was talking to my doctor. I have a great integrative physician. And she said, that's way too much to do. And I was joking with her. I'm like, well, to be honest, I kind of thought I could deal with all the trauma in August and then just hit September.
Yeah, clear. All done.
Just going to clear it.
That sounds ridiculous when I say it out loud, but in my mind, I was like, yeah, we'll just tie this up.
You're the type of person that likes to get things done quickly.
We'll just tie this all up.
Yeah.
No, I haven't really started. I finished the 30 days, but I've got a lot more.
What do you think of breath work?
Oh, I think it's amazing. Actually, that tremor and release was also breath work. And I think it's great to do it with other people. I think I'm craving other people after COVID. Just like online things are fine, but I just love being in the room with
It's the energy of people as well.
Oh God, it's great.
We can't live without that.
Not always.
True. Very, very true. But that sort of side of health isn't the only thing you're doing. I'm actually really, really interested to hear about all the work you're doing with Menopause, the hot flashes.
Other platform.
Yes.
Okay.
My
which
baby.
I think is awesome.
My baby, I didn't.
So I mean, this is a topic which is, people often shy away from this.
Oh, it was taboo.
People
you don't talk about
like to talk about the menopause.
Yeah, I mean, when you're a woman, first of all, menopause happens around 51, 49. I just heard is like one of the average ages.
I mean, but it can happen earlier or later.
Well, there's perimenopause.
Perimenopause, which is all the years before it. So that can be 8, 10. Today I just heard someone say 10 to 15
They
years
said
before.
it easily could be 10 years.
Subtle changes that you don't even notice. Your cycle could be the same, but you're having subtle changes. And if you haven't...
Before we jump into that, what made you focus on this?
Well, I had a terrible perimenopause and I didn't know it.
Okay. Oh, wow, okay.
When I talk about working on all this stuff, I hit 41 and things just really went sideways for me. And I had no idea what was going on.
Explain sideways.
I mean, I started having terrible nightmares every night that I was dying. And
the repeat nightmare?
Every night.
Oh, wow.
I was to take a pill to keep me alive. And when I woke up, like a movie, like, I would have forgotten to have taken the pill for a period of time. So I would be on the brink of death. And so I would wake up scrambling through my bedside table looking for this pill, on my hands and knees, like, where's the pill? Where's the pill? It was so bizarre. And I started having panic attacks and really bad intrusive thoughts, like just terrible, like out for dinner, like your house is on fire. I text my brother, he doesn't text me back, which is normal.
Yeah,
he's dead.
The family's in a ditch.
Yeah.
The van's in a ditch.
Yeah.
Like the whole family's in the ditch. I took my niece once. I was home visiting, and my dad got us tickets for the World Figure Skating Championships. I used to be a figure skater. This is my dream. I never thought I'd ever be able to go to this. It's always in like Japan or Switzerland or something. It's in my hometown. I take my niece to daycare. I take her in. She's a little toddler. I take off her little snowsuit. I take her in her little room. I leave, come back. My dad picks me up. We're sitting. It's like Blades of Glory, you know, that Will Ferrell movie. It's hilarious. It's awesome. It's packed. You left her in the car. She's frozen.
Oh, God.
And like in my body, that is the reality. And I don't know what's happening, right? Why am I getting this thought?
Yeah.
And I want to say something to my dad. And I want to go call my brother. But I can't because I know that's insane.
You don't want them thinking you're crazy.
Yes, because I know I took her in.
Yeah.
But I don't know it because
You
I'm
question
having
it.
this. Yeah. And
Wow.
then it would take me like 2 days to calm down from something like that. All my eyelashes fell out. Like I had developed a sudden fear of flying.
Your eyelashes physically fell out, actually, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Twice. You do not want to lose your eyelashes.
No,
It's
I
No.
very
can't imagine.
upsetting. But,
And it takes a while to come back, right?
Yeah. You know, I was, to deal with the anxiety, I was doing what I had always done, which is work out, create like crazy workout plans, you know, like, I mean, spin for 45 minutes,
keep
race
really
over to
busy.
Bikram. Like, I would make these plans and then I feel better. But then drink in the weekend, you know, binge drink on the weekend, brunch or whatever. And then just really suffering. It's fear of flying. Terrible. Just, you know, I'm flying back and forth to Canada constantly. And I just all of a sudden have to drink like Jack Daniels to get on the plane. I can't.
Wow.
And it literally happened overnight, or?
It felt like it.
Yeah.
It really did. I started having tantrums. I mean, I was living with someone at the time, and I remember just having like a tantrum because I spilled some juice. Like, and he said, "We're not watching a movie. You have to go to sleep." Like, I was like, you know, these things. And then physically, just feeling very weird a lot of the time. And I remember sitting at my desk at the National just thinking, I think I'm having an aneurysm. I feel like I'm having a heart attack. At least I'm around these people when I fall out of my chair. Like, heart palpitations, tingling all over my body. And me saying to people, do you ever get tingling all over your body? Do you ever, you know? So I went to probably 10, 12 doctors during this time. I had a visit to the ER because I thought I had deep chest pain. I thought I was having a heart attack. It wasn't until, like, no one said a word to me about perimenopause.
I was just saying, did anyone give you a diagnosis up until this point of what it could have been?
Listen,
I did.
like, even when I was growing up, it was literally, for menopause was after 50. There was nothing else. That was it. That was
to
the
me,
information.
it was like 60. Like, to me, this is in the far off.
Yeah.
And the other thing was, for as long as you've got your period, you can have babies. All these things that were just not freaking true.
So to go back to that then, so you can be perimenopausal and still have a period?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and my period was regular.
Okay, so perimenopausal, and correct me if I'm wrong, because again, these are things that I've only just recently found out. It doesn't mean that your period's stopping. It just means certain things are changing. So, for example,
body's
you
evolving.
may have had, you know, you may not have had PMS before.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden
you
you're
start
getting
getting it.
PMS. Your body temperature now sort of, you know, your body temperature escalates when you're getting ovulating and, you know, whatever. Before you may not have noticed it because it was very little. Now you might, you know, get really hot, get a lot hotter, and it's like, you know, that sort of stuff. Or, you know, your period used to last 5 days. Now it only lasts 4 days.
Yeah.
Or you might start
Just an
missing
evolution.
some periods. All this would happen to women, and women had no idea that that was perimenopause. It means you're on your way. Things are changing.
Yes. It's the beginning of the process.
It's the beginning of a very long process. So like they said, it could last for 10 years. But
perimenopausal
perimenopausal
can last 10 years, or the menopause?
Menopause, there's a little bit of a dispute. Menopause is the moment in time when you haven't had your period for 12 months.
For 12 months, right?
But then you're in postmenopause. But then there's a whole school of
So
thought
then
that
what
you're
that-
actually in menopause for all the rest of the time you don't have your
Got
period.
you.
Yeah.
Women in menopause. You hear that a
Yeah.
lot now, and I like that. I feel like that's a better way to sort of describe it.
Yeah.
And in perimenopause.
Yeah, because I'd never heard of it being perimenopause. You've hit menopause if you haven't had it, and then now you're postmenopause.
Yeah,
I think that's
It
silly.
makes no sense.
Yeah, I know, it makes
That's
no-
it. You're done.
A lot
You're-
of stuff about this makes
Wow,
no sense.
okay,
People
interesting.
don't know a lot about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, your period can change. And what's happening, what I realize now, I mean, I had a lot of care during that time. I had a naturopath who helped me with adrenal exhaustion when my eyelashes fell out, and I had a lot of unbalances, but no one said, you
That
know,
it's
you're in
perimenopause.
you
This
know,
is the
when you
period.
hit this time, this is what starts happening. And now I know all the psychological stuff. When the earliest stages, you start, it's always, the conversation gets like hijacked by estrogen. But really what starts happening is your progesterone starts
Progesterone's going
dropping.
down.
And that impacts your stress response. the HPA axis, they call it, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. And so oftentimes in the early stages, the integrative people are way further ahead. You just maybe need a little progesterone, or you maybe just need to add magnesium and then walks and just be aware.
Yeah.
But if you're wandering around, like a lot of women, and until I was 47 is when I missed a period. My periods were regular, but like you said, they changed. The heavy day would be the fourth day. The crampy day would be the fourth day.
Like that's what I've heard.
Yeah,
Again,
no, it's,
you know.
But you don't want this to be happening, right?
No.
'Cause this means you're getting old, and this means
so this is like
you're in
it's quite
denial.
psychologically, this is quite a challenge because then
It's very big
you're starting to confront your age, mortality, like many different things.
But also
you know, the ability
identity.
to have
the end.
children.
It feels like
It's to me it was like one of the things was like, oh yeah, brilliant. Like when you're younger, you're like, oh, can't wait to hit menopause, no more periods, because you know women spend their lives having to deal with this period that gets, you know, there's a lot of traumas and things to do with that. And then as it sort of creeps over and gets closer, you sort of hold on. Then that a big part of what it is to be a woman is fertility.
Identity, I guess.
Well, it's fertility.
The ability to have children.
The ability to have children.
Yeah.
So it's it's one thing to have fertility issues. That's one thing. But then there will be a day where you can no longer physically have kids.
Yeah.
then
that-
who are you?
That fucks with your head.
of
It
course.
really does.
Because it's like, oh, I'm broken. I'm like, throw me in the bin. I'm done.
Yeah.
And the messaging about it is that you're dried out,
Horrific.
you're
You're, you know, she's dried
Why
out.
I started this platform is, first of all, I found it, I missed a period. I'm like, okay, I'm in perimenopause. I did some research. I didn't like what I saw. I'm a journalist. I decided this is negative. It's really negative. And then I did some reading, and I thought about all the happy older ladies. And I have a friend who hung out with some older women. Her husband called them the menopause. They're so happy. They
love
have
it.
so
That's
much
cool.
fun. So I
That
always say
should be a
perimenopause.
t-shirt.
I am. No, I'm going to. I call it menopause. Thank you, Craig. But I think that the most important thing is that it's going somewhere good, but the narrative still is that it's the end. And
Yeah.
women
and you
are
have
just
to suffer.
as much. Yeah.
And you have to suffer.
Yeah.
That's how I've always understood it. It's gonna freaking suck, and there's nothing you
But
can
which
do
is-
about it.
It's so individual for every single woman, and you can't separate it from what you bring into this time. And I now know that women with mental health challenges or trauma, adverse childhood experiences, whatever, have a harder time. This is, you've been dealing with stuff in a certain way, and it just stops working. And everyone says that, like, what I'm doing to lose weight isn't working. What I'm doing to, like drinking, numbing, shopping, whatever you do, it doesn't work anymore. You have to really re-examine everything. But
Agree.
it doesn't have to be terrible. I mean, there's women who have nothing.
Yeah.
There's tribes in Mongolia and Africa who've been studied who have nothing. They don't even have a name for it. So there's countries where it isn't terrible. There's places where women are suffering so much, but there's a lot more going on. And I think, I say the first symptom of perimenopause is denial. And once you can wrap
It's
your
not
head,
happening. It's not happening.
it was so much better once I realized it. And
Because I guess then you can learn to live with it.
Well,
You
you understand what's going on, because
And
it
it also
also
starts to make
because
sense.
it also, like, again, it mentally affects you.
Yeah.
So one of the things is for women who are perimenopause or going through menopause, brain fog.
Yeah.
Like not being in the middle of doing something. Like a really dear friend of mine, and she's like quite senior. She goes, Lily, I would sit in presentations and I'm presenting, and I'd lose where I'm at.
Yeah.
And not realizing that, and then she went to go get help, went to the doctor, and then she found out, okay, she's going through menopause.
But I guess because you don't know, then you can kind of attribute those symptoms to so many other things. You could be like, oh my God, I'm getting dementia. Oh my God, I'm having a heart attack. Oh my
Everyone
God, I'm
always
going
thinks
crazy.
that.
Or the
Yeah.
hot,
know what I mean? There's
menopause
so
was
many
like for me,
things.
it's like, oh my God, it's like hot flushes. It's like, what is it, the night sweats?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I'm
some
like,
people don't.
"Jeez."
I've never really. I had a little bit of it. Some people. I had a friend who was just waking up like 10 times a night. It's so different.
Individual.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Because
really
it's a process,
is.
it's a journey.
Yeah. But what's this part that gets lost all the time is that through this process, however you decide to deal with it, if you decide to take hormone therapy to help your symptoms, if you decide to go the natural route, if you decide to do the mixture, you are going into a place of like huge wisdom.
Yeah.
And we've been sold a sort of story about this that is not true. And I have just gone through that year. I'm like now officially in menopause or whatever. And I have had a very hard time in my life in terms of just coping and my emotions. And believing in myself and knowing my worth. And what I've experienced in the last year is phenomenal. And I wouldn't trade it. And I'm super glad.
Yeah.
And so I just think if you don't have role models talking about it, this is what's so great about this time. Because ageism is the last ism.
Yeah.
Particularly rough here in the UAE.
Very
it's
true.
a very young place, but
Yeah.
it's rough all over. And so this is all wrapped up in it. And I think we're dismantling it now. And I'm pretty excited about how many people are sort of talking about this. Like I mentioned to you guys earlier that,
Yeah.
you know, big podcasts like Peter Attia and Andrew Huberman.
Yeah.
And I heard Lewis Howes talking to someone about hormones today, fasting. And I heard Stephen Bartlett ask Mindy Peltz, who's a fasting expert, like, how's menopause going? And she said, thank you for asking. And I'm like, this is just happening. This is just.
But I love the fact that you so every time you're saying the word menopause, you actually smile.
Yeah, interestingly. Yeah, you do.
Every time you've said it.
Yeah. So I'm
That's
going to ask the
crazy.
question, so how's menopause going for you?
Yeah, it's going great. And you know what's funny is when I decided to do this, and I was called to do this, like I just had, I probably would have done something else if I had my choice, but I just had to. I became obsessed and I spent so much time on it. And I remember saying, okay, well, this is probably like the kiss of death for me ever having a boyfriend again, because like, who's going to want to date the woman who talks about menopause all the time? I dated a lot, and no one cared. No one cared. And then when you talk about something all the time, it just loses.
Yeah, it
you know,
loses
so if
the
other
relevance.
people are getting embarrassed when I'm saying it, I'm not noticing anymore. Like
Yeah.
there's just it's lost all, you know, and it's been really good to me. I've met a community of women around the world. I was in New York at the end of June for a talk with some celebrities, and it's a platform called Perry, and we had just had a great talk, and I just thought, wow, like how do I know all these women? And I went to an event in Harlem with Black Girls Guide to Menopause, and I met a girl, Karen Arthur, who came from England, and she has menopause whilst black, and I met all my buddies there, and it was insane. I'm in a group in the UK called Mental Clarity.
I'm so happy to hear women talking about menopause. Women talking about menopause with each other.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't there.
Oh, but you know what's funny? With my friends, my actual friends, we don't talk about it very much.
See?
They don't like talking about it.
See?
They don't.
Is it because they're in denial? They're in denial that
very
it may
best friend,
happen.
like,
or
I don't
something.
even know what she's.
It was just so taboo.
But
They
it's
don't like
such-
talking about it.
So this is, we've talked about so many different things previous on different episodes, but this is such a natural process in life. It's happened forever.
Yeah.
Like, it's not something which has just all of a sudden happened to the female human race.
Why don't we talk about it? It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's you know
Is it
you
because
have
of
commercials
society?
for erectile
I'm
dysfunction like
well,
all the time.
okay. I'm trying to think of a male version of this conversation.
Well, there is andropause. I mean, there is
And what's that?
a much less acute, pervasive situation where men's testosterone is dropping. Our testosterone
yes.
is dropping as well from our
As a
30s.
42-year-old male, I can
think-
agree with
yeah,
that.
And you
Okay.
might have low T,
Yeah.
and you might get topped up, and you might have a lot of the same brain fog,
Yeah.
hot flashes.
Agree.
Even they're
Yeah.
just not referred to in the same way with the same shame.
Yeah.
But men have shame about it. I have spoken to.
Well, that's pretty
doctors
true
who
because
treat
men don't like talking about it,
No.
especially when
You won't even
there's a
talk
lot
about
of
your
bravado
prostate. You won't
around testosterone.
But you guys won't even talk about your prostates.
That's very true.
We won't talk about your feelings.
You
We'll talk
know,
about your prostate.
I think I talk about my feelings too much now. I've gone the opposite way. So yeah, so I kind of go on a different level of spectrum. But, it's
but
true,
I
like,
think a part of it is, I think a bit of it is the whole female identity. So the only equivalent I can think of, and it's a really stretch example, is if men talked about infertility amongst them, they won't.
Or erectile dysfunction.
You know, like what it is to
It's
be
men
a
lot
man.
of the time, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So erectile
How many
dysfunction,
times has
or
someone
you know,
whispered to me, it's him, it's not me.
Yeah.
Like, I've had that whispered to me so many times.
you know. So
Interesting.
So
I'm just
I
wondering
think
what-
it's something in there because if you talk about it, then you're admitting that you're there.
Yeah.
You know, the only time someone's going to talk about menopause is if they're wondering if they're in menopause. And if you admit you're in that, then that starts. You have to start accepting the fact that a big part of what it is to be a woman, in the world we live in and how we're identified. I'm not saying it is but in the world we live in, a big value is put on your ability, you being a mother, your
Yeah, of
ability to
course.
have children.
Yes.
If men, at some point in their lives, went through something that stopped them from being fertile, they would be having the same
Of
issues.
course. So I was
They
just-
don't have to have that
As you were
conversation.
talking, I was just trying to figure out, like, at what point in society did it become taboo? Like, how? Because it's such a natural
Well,
thing.
come on, listen, until recently, no one talked about periods.
Yeah,
That
true.
is so true. I remember a young girl in the newsroom at the National on a Saturday. She had like a tampon, and the photographer was like, he was my age, and he was like, oh my God. And I kind of thought it was cool. Like she just pulled her tampon out. She didn't hide it, and her
Perfectly natural.
Yeah.
It's normal.
But for
It's
women,
happened
anything.
since-
But for women,
since
all those
evolution.
things, it was
Never.
not. It was uncouth.
But also as well, people don't get educated about
You know,
this.
what's the other thing we've learned? Women didn't even talk. Fertility wasn't spoken about.
Yeah.
Women going through fertility issues. People, couples who were suffering years trying to get pregnant, suffered in silence.
So is it
and
because
now
you have
that's
that-
becoming.
Is it because it's almost like, that shame of not being perfect?
I think the
kind of
word is
thing?
simply shame.
I think there was shame, and it did so much damage
Yeah.
because not talking about your period means not knowing about your cycle, which means not knowing what can cause infertility later. Like I never knew that I could be having a period and not ovulating, and how dangerous that would be.
So Dan, translation
I'm
here.
learning so much in this one, by the way, so
translation
much.
here is pretty much most girls
Yeah.
think, because that's what we're taught, when you get your period, that means you
you're
can now have
ovulating.
babies.
Yeah.
No, that you can have babies. You're
Yeah.
now you're a young woman. You're a full-fledged woman now. But the irony is, when you're having your period is not when you're fertile.
Yeah.
And most girls just thought, if you get your period, you're fertile. No, it's got everything to do with ovulation.
Yeah.
They have no clue. So you could be having your period, but not be fertile,
Got you.
and not know you had issues
and
with,
not be
with
getting the immense physical benefits of ovulation, which
Exactly.
obviously the way we're designed, everything's for a reason.
Yeah.
And if you're not ovulating, it's not great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that creates
not great
a
for your
real
overall health. Yeah.
So much. So even the female community, I just find that it's so refreshing that they are talking to each other.
So on that note then, so are people talking about it a lot more now?
So much.
Clearly.
So much more.
So
Yeah.
much.
I mean, just think about the birth control pill. I
Yeah.
was put on the birth control pill when I was 16 to regulate my cycle.
Yeah.
That's just nonsense. That's just ridiculous. Like, first of all, a 16-year-old probably won't have a normal cycle for a little while. And
But they were
secondly,
dishing that out.
basically puts you into menopause. It overrides all your natural hormones with synthetic hormones. You're not ovulating for God knows how many years, 10 years of my life.
And that's
I'll
why
never
people,
know.
I'm going to say that's why people struggle to ovulate or to conceive after taking
Well,
the pill.
we're still waiting for the research.
The
but,
research
it's-
isn't definitive, but how can it not affect?
Yeah, of course.
You just override our whole natural rhythm for
Yeah.
a number of years. There's a payback. There just has to be
I
a yin and
remember.
yang.
I remember they used to prescribe birth control pills if girls had really bad acne.
Yeah.
Yeah,
To
'cause the
fix
hormones.
hormone.
Yeah.
Or
And I'm
even to
like, are
fix-
you joking?
Imagine.
For acne, you would do that to a
Because
female.
the acne will be a response to
Well, it's your
hormone
hormones. It's
level.
the same thing with boys. It's
Yeah.
it's the testosterone, your hormones when you're going through that spurt. They don't put boys on bloody.
Yeah.
You have
Okay.
no idea what happened when you're on the pill too. I mean,
No.
it can shrink your clitoris
Oh,
by up to
I didn't-
20%.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Oh, wow.
I'll never know.
Oh, they
You
don't.
never
I'm so glad I
Did
didn't
they
touch
put on
that
the
stuff.
warnings? I don't think they put that on the TV.
No,
advert.
they
I
don't.
never
But I
saw
don't
that
think it's
one.
in there. But I had a neighbor just say
That
when
was,
I was
that was definitely not
I
created
think-
by a woman.
I think even when I was 16 and not into that stuff yet, I think I would have still said no.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I just had a neighbor that lives near my father, and she came over and said her daughter hadn't had her period. She was in her early 20s, so we popped her on the pill.
Yeah.
Popped her on the pill. It's like, popped her on the pill. Like, why is she not having her period?
Wow.
Yeah,
What is
that's
the
Ask-
reason?
ask
re-
the
you need to ask the
question.
And that's just, I think, just no one asking any questions, right?
Yeah.
This is my whole life now. And I'm a journalist. I've been asking questions the entire time. But now I'm just like, whoa. Like,
Whoa.
what did I not question?
Yeah.
What did I not question? What did I take for granted?
So, in your perspective, why are people asking more questions now? Because if people are talking about it, people are more intuitive or inquisitive into
It's a sharing of
understand what's
information,
happening.
right? Like all the information has become more available.
Accessible.
Listen,
You started with
yeah.
blogs. You
I
started
think
with blogs.
I think the connectivity.
Okay.
The thing is, actually, I don't think that it's been a case that people haven't been questioning, but before, the collective questioning wasn't seen by everyone because we weren't so digitally connected.
Yeah. And people kind of questioning in silo.
Yeah.
You
At
couldn't. You'd have to
home,
find
in
a
private
book
time.
or,
Do you know
or
what
a
I
savvy
mean?
person.
Yeah.
But just take the example of the pill.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've interviewed people who talk about this, and it's controversial to criticize the pill, and I think we probably know why,
Yeah.
because it's a
Yep.
big money maker.
Yep. Huge money
Pharmaceutical
maker.
But that
companies
started
are-
with blogs, people gathering their stories about what happened to them on the birth control pill. Fertility started with blogs, and then it all became more accessible. And I remember in journalism, starting when blogs came, I had one of the first blogs at our newspaper chain, but using blogs and finding bloggers because they became the experts. And I remember pitching stories and the editors being like, "Where are you getting this story?" And I'd say, "Well, it's on the blog."
So-and-so's blog.
They'd be like that, and that's where the experts started and connected, and that's how, because you can find almost anything. Now this is detrimental as well, because you can find almost anything.
Exactly.
You can find.
And now it's very hard to know
What is true.
Yeah.
Look,
'Cause, like-
we've seen this with TikTok, with the narcissist talk, and now it's almost like everyone's a narcissist. If you went on a date with someone, they didn't call you back, they're a narcissist.
Yeah.
It's like not.
And this
maybe
is how you
were-
deal with the narcissist.
Yeah, it's too much, but there are narcissists. We've all run across
But
them.
that is the thing that I do find quite scary is, like even when we're saying like somatic and this sort of healing, go on Instagram. Everyone's a healer.
True.
Right?
Yes,
But the
agreed.
scary thing is, and I listen to this stuff and I'm listening to this and look at the amount of followers they have and I'm like, oh my God, you're talking absolute shite.
It's very hard to decipher what is facts and fiction.
But when it comes to but when it comes to
in most
healing,
journalism even now, I guess.
yeah, but when it comes to healing and when it comes to things to do with mental health, that's a really
Of course.
yeah, but it's such
They're
a
so fragile.
very fragile.
Yeah.
And that's why we can take it to a different level. That's why some of these people feed on vulnerable people.
And
Yes,
and
they know
like I'm
exactly
just
what
like, oh my God.
It's manipulation.
Yeah, it's real. Yeah, but it's really scary.
really
because
upsetting.
the possible endpoint of that could be someone getting really hurt.
Yeah, we could take that into a whole
Whole new, but we
I
won't
first
go
noticed
there.
that in yoga. I first
Yeah.
noticed that like 23 years ago in yoga
Well,
when I was like, I just think of like the poor divorcing guy who just has no clue, Googling and finding some of the yoga teachers that I've come across that are preaching and talking crap. And I get really nervous.
Yeah.
No one's your guru.
No.
That's very important.
But on a, you get the final question because I think we've got to wrap up.
Yeah, we're wrapping up very shortly. I'm actually really enjoying this
I
topic.
know.
Like, because obviously, like,
Listen.
I've been to context. Like, I've
Yeah.
never had these discussions with a woman before.
But one
by the
thing
way.
I do want to say is one thing that I love about this movement or this shift is women are finally being seen.
Yeah.
Not that they weren't before, but there's a level of being seen that wasn't there before. So, for example, if I had a really bad period, and it doesn't happen often, and you need to take a sick day, you didn't feel that you could having a period and having that pain was not seen as a reason to be sick.
Well, that's it. I can't remember who.
I think it's Tisha.
Someone's like menopause leave, so you get like an
No,
extra
you
day
have
or
that
two.
now. You have that, but you also there are companies
Not
that are
menopause leave, sorry.
period
Period
leave.
Menstrual leave, sorry.
Yeah, menstrual leave. They now do it because it's a real freaking thing.
Of course it is.
Yeah, but we weren't allowed to have
Agree.
it. We weren't allowed to feel it. It was, come on. How many times is the joke of, oh my God, you got your period. Oh yeah, you're in
Yeah, or
pain.
she's
Oh,
cranky.
cry me a river. Or
Yeah.
here we go, Shark Week. That's
or a
why
woman
you're
can't
cranky.
be a leader because
She's
would
gonna-
like have the
too
nuke
emotional.
codes and
Yeah.
she might be on her period. I heard that growing up.
Oh my God, yeah, can you imagine?
Absolute
Wow.
rubbish.
That's when I heard that so many times why a woman couldn't be president in the U.S.
Yeah.
when I growing up in North
Yeah.
America.
What, because you have a period?
Yeah, because you
Yeah.
might have your period and then you could like create nuclear war if you were.
You'll press the
nuclear war.
button if it's a bad day.
I
I
mean,
mean,
I heard that too.
in the nicest possible way, look
Yeah.
at who's had the nuke codes in the
Yeah,
past in
exactly.
the US and they were not women.
But-
Right, there was problems there.
But on the flip side, I was talking to some guy once, and we were, saying, as women have opportunities. Wording I can't remember right, but basically saying that as men get older, as we're getting older, the one thing at least in employment that an older man would have over an older woman is a woman has to deal with menopause. And that in
Wow.
the workplace will give them an advantage
Crazy
because her brain's
discrimination.
not working, brain fog and this, that, and
So
the other.
by default, men are supposed to have more superior brains.
But what I mean is, like, again, that flip side of
Yeah.
opening the conversation, and I'm glad it's happening there, is because there's even people that think that, oh, brilliant. Women in their 50s are, it was at one point, we're useless in our 20s because we're, for all our lives, because we got our periods. Then we're useless because, we're going to have babies. And you think once all that's
Interesting. I
over,
never
it's
thought about
done.
this.
Oh, now we're useless
Yeah,
because we're going to be
menopause.
menopausal.
yeah, you're never the right age.
FML.
You're you're too young, then you're too old.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And this brain fog thing, I just say be upfront about it.
Yeah.
I'm in this like crypto
'cause men don't
blockchain
have-
community, and then the guy.
Sorry, go on.
Well, I just saw the guy that's leading this crypto. He just said the other day, like, guys, I'm having some brain fog. Sorry.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Brilliant.
look at him just saying it.
Brilliant.
Like, don't be ashamed then. So I do it at Live Healthy. I say,
Yeah.
guys, I forgot that. You got to tell me because sometimes I.
Yeah.
My brain is malfunctioning at such a rapid rate right now, and it's just down to exhaustion and being consumed with so many things to do. Like literally about brain fog. for the
But
last
that's what
2
I'm. But
weeks.
that's what I'm loving. I think the world is shifting to a place where we can be more authentic. We
Yes.
can say, it's okay to not be okay.
Yes.
It's okay to sit in a meeting and say, I'm not sure what the answer is. Because I always get, people going, oh, how do you sit in meetings or whatever and blah, blah, blah. Or how do you, what would you, I'm so scared of presenting and standing up on stage. And I'm like, what's the worst that happens? Oh, what if someone asks me something I don't know? I don't know.
But this takes a tremendous amount of self-awareness and self-worth
Yeah.
to just be okay with saying, I don't know,
But the world's-
I screwed up.
But there's been a shift to make it okay. There's a collective shift.
So I'm gonna try and get
Yeah.
to my questions now.
Get your question
There you
in.
go.
Have it.
So I guess the first, I'm going to ask two. The first, slightly selfish.
you got
actually.
three.
I've got two. So the first question is what more needs to be done, and then the second part of that question is what more needs to be done by men.
Okay.
Oh, I like that
Yeah.
question.
A lot. We need more research. There are 1.1 million studies when you look in PubMed, which is the database for studies on pregnancy, and there's only like 94,000 on menopause and only 6,000 on perimenopause. So 1/10 of the research, and it crosses everything.
Yeah.
It crosses every pain management. It crosses psychology. It crosses gut health. There's just so many intersections. So we need people studying it. And
But even fertility, the research of fertility is dated. So they
Which is
need
insane when you think
well
about
because
it.
they basically say, listen, when a woman turns 36, she's considered geriatric.
that's crazy.
Right?
Okay.
What is that based on? Research from eons ago. They haven't updated it. There is so much. If they did the stats now, life has changed.
Yeah, of course.
Women are not starting to have kids till they're 35.
Yeah.
How can you
Women-
be geriatric? when
How
you're
can you
like-
be
course.
geriatric when you're 36? Granted, 40 onwards, it's the levels drop, but we've changed.
Yeah.
Like I would
And lifestyles in
love
society and everything else
to
is-
see the research and see what fertility for a woman in her 40s actually truly looks like
That's
these
interesting,
days.
yeah.
Because there are women having babies in their 40s and without IVF
And healthy babies.
and healthy babies.
And healthy pregnancies.
Okay.
And you
So-
can't be very quite fertile in perimenopause because actually your estrogen is going up and down and up and down. So there's actually times where you can be more fertile.
Yeah. Okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
So
And
the
what
second
can
part-
men do? You had your that question's brilliant.
Like honestly, this is like a topic which I've never
Ask
ever
questions,
discussed
ask
before.
questions. Ask questions and listen.
Okay.
And just be curious and open and not like
Give
grossed
space.
out and question if you're like, oh,
Yeah.
menopause. And I heard someone the other day say that her husband said, are you going to be talking about perimenopause? Is everything going to be perimenopause now? Yeah, maybe.
For a while, anyway.
For a while, yeah.
Yeah.
While I go through it.
Yeah, because my only kind of connection to the menopause is, I think my mother went through it.
Well, you think, of course she did.
No. So, she has gone through it. Like, she's
Oh,
in her
as in,
60s
yeah.
now. I'm just trying to think, going through childhood, she had to have a hysterectomy, and I think that
brings it
that
on
brought
early.
on the menopause.
Yeah.
I think, from my
Yeah, it
understanding.
does, yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out kind of what happened, and
Yeah.
I just remember she was having patches because she was emotional.
Yeah.
And people would be like, "Oh, your mum's emotional because she's on the menopause." It was kind of very dismissed.
I just wish people.
we never
Those are
talked
the
about
statements
it.
I don't want to hear.
Yeah.
Or she's emotional because she's she's menopausal. It's like, can you just? I'm emotional because I'm emotional.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Can we just? Can you start? Don't invalidate my feelings. It's like
Very
when a
true.
girl is on her. If a girl gets cranky, she must be on her period. I'm like, oh, for the love of God, I'm cranky because you're being a dipshit.
Because you're an ass.
There's a lot of anger at this time of
Yeah.
life, which I think scares people.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of anger because anger and grief. Because you're coming through your whole life and
Yeah.
you're reckoning with a lot of things that have
Yeah.
happened and what you've done and said and swallowed and put up
Yeah.
with. And
Yeah, true.
and so there's a lot of reckoning. And I wonder if you could do you think you could ever talk to your mom about it and ask her?
Actually, I could actually with my mom. Like, we have a very open relationship, and we talk about the most random things. Yes, I've never felt the need
Yeah, why would you?
But
why
but
would
it's a
I?
very-
Like, until we're talking right now, then maybe next time when I see, I'll be like, oh, okay, so
But
tell me
that's
about
a
your
beautiful
experience.
thing you've done. You've actually the thing that I think people don't realize and is that you said when it comes to menopause and at that time, there's a lot of self-reflection that happens about your life.
Yes.
You don't
It's
think
about
about that.
choices
You
that you
always
made or
think
didn't
about
make.
the physicality of what's happening to you, and not what happens there. Because you're facing your mortality.
Really?
You're
Right, so-
facing 100% your mortality. You're reckoning with your past.
But that's what I mean,
what
which
you've done,
makes you look at your
and-
past
yeah.
and look at your life.
But you also have probably 30, 40 years left to live.
Yeah,
So
no,
how
but
do
you
want
think you
those years
don't.
to be?
Because this is not the end.
Right.
This is the beginning of a
No,
next
but
It's
phase
a
of the
very
journey.
but
big
it's making-
transition. Yeah,
yeah.
it's hard to unpack.
Yeah.
It's very
Yeah.
very hard to talk
Yeah.
about because there's so much there,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
have a lot of people have young kids, and a lot of people have aging parents, and that all hits at
Yeah.
the same
But
time.
they've
That's a
also
very interesting thing as well,
redefined. Remember, Dr. Saliha was the one. I saw a piece that she did explaining what midlife crisis is,
Yeah.
because everyone thinks, oh, midlife crisis is going out and buying a Ferrari, but it isn't. It's basically it's actually a passage that for
Yeah.
you to start to go into the next chapter of your life, but it's a time where. It's the first time in your life that you've had a moment to stop running, because usually it's in your 40s, right?
Yeah.
You got into a point where you're a good place in your career, life is good, you've had your, kids or whatever usually,
Yeah.
and then it's a time where you stop and you sort of, and it's the same thing, I think it's the next one with menopause, but it's the beginning of the sort of,
The next phase.
well, no, you actually stop and look at who you are, and it's the first time that you get to stop and go, okay, so and you look at the way you've lived and you start questioning. And sometimes in this part, there's a lot of self-awareness that happens that didn't happen before, that you go, hold on a minute, I've been living a life that I don't want.
Yeah.
True.
Right. So that's where you see people, ditch their job and go, I don't know, go to the mountains and become a ski instructor. But it's not that they've lost their mind. They're finally living their truth.
Yeah. True.
And sometimes they also mourn a loss.
Yeah.
So
You
it's,
mentioned grief earlier.
but before we, it was all these things were defined in such negative ways.
Yeah.
I'm loving the collective shift.
Lastly, there's just a shift from the maiden to the mother. I've been learning a lot about this lately in feminine literature, where the maiden lives according to the expectations of others and sacrifices herself a lot, and it's becoming your own mother.
Oh, wow.
And making yourself happy and living according to the rhythm of your own heart. And I call this sometimes the heroine's journey, based on the hero's journey, which is at the center of every book written or movie or poem. And Dr. Afridi talks about it. I've spoken with her before, where you're called to change everything.
Yeah.
And you really suffer when you ignore the call.
Yeah.
So it's a really beautiful time. It's a lot though.
It's a process.
Yeah.
You have given me so much to think about. Like I'm literally
and
spinning.
goosebumps.
Oh, nice.
Thank you so much
Amazing.
for joining us.
Thank you for having
Yeah,
me.
anytime. I'd be
Thank you.
excited to have you back again.
No, we'll get you
Really
back.
love
We'll
all
get you
this.
back.
Cool.
All
Thank you so
right.
much.
Thank you.
Welcome to Rooted Within with Lily and Dan, a podcast that shines a spotlight on positive change makers sharing their stories of legacy, inspiration, and impact.